No one in Missouri expected to wake up to this. Before sunrise on December the 2nd, St. Louis and Kansas City were suddenly thrown into a winter nightmare as a fast-moving storm slammed into the state hours earlier than forecast. One moment the roads were wet and quiet. The next they were coated in a sheet of white that froze solid in minutes. Highways turned into parking lots, cars spun out across icy lanes, and morning commuters found themselves trapped in bumper-to-bumper gridlock stretching for miles. Snow fell so quickly that plows couldn't keep up. Traffic cameras showed headlights buried in swirling whiteouts, drivers inching forward on what felt like black ice, and emergency crews struggling to reach crash scenes scattered across two major metro areas. Missouri has seen winter storms before, but not this early, not this fast, and not with this much chaos. And as the storm kept building, both St. Louis and Kansas City realized they were facing their first true test of the season, long before winter officially arrived. St. Louis woke up on December the 2nd, expecting a routine Monday morning, cold but manageable. Forecasters had originally predicted the first wave of snow to arrive around mid-afternoon. Instead, the storm barreled in shortly before noon, hitting the city 4 hours early and instantly throwing the entire region into disarray. Within minutes, rooftops, sidewalks, and major highways were blanketed in a thick white coating. But it wasn't the snow itself that caught drivers off guard. It was how fast it bonded to the pavement. As the flakes piled up, they packed into a slick, icy layer that even seasoned Midwestern drivers struggled to navigate. On Interstate 70, traffic slowed to a crawl as cars fishtailed across lanes, brake lights glowing in the swirling snow. Farther south on Interstate 64, multiple fender benders brought entire stretches to a standstill, and Highway 40 near Prospect Lake looked more like a frozen parking lot than a highway with vehicles stuck, wheels spinning, and drivers trying desperately to gain traction. Residents described the roads as pure ice, and they weren't exaggerating. Bridges glazed over almost instantly, and elevated ramps became dangerous slides. Even four-wheel drive SUVs struggled to stay straight as visibility dropped and winds pushed snow across the asphalt. The Missouri Department of Transportation admitted that crews had been caught by surprise. Expecting a later arrival, they hadn't pre-treated the roads early enough. By the time the first flakes hit, it was already too late. Conditions deteriorated faster than crews could respond. Plows scrambled to get into position, but heavy traffic and multiple accidents slowed them down. Across the St. Louis Metro commuters found themselves stuck in their cars for 1 to 2 hours, inching forward in heavy snow, praying they wouldn't slide into the vehicle in front of them. Emergency responders struggled to reach crash sites as new accidents kept forming behind them. What should have been a normal Monday morning commute turned into a citywide traffic crisis, setting the tone for one of Missouri's most disruptive early-season snowstorms in years.
Off we go.
While St. Louis battled a midday meltdown, Kansas City never even made it through the morning. The storm reached the metro area before sunrise, right as thousands of drivers were pouring onto the highways for the early commute. What should have been a cold, uneventful start to the week turned into a full-scale winter emergency within minutes. Just after 6:00 a.m., the first bands of snow swept across the Kansas City metro. At first it looked harmless, a light dusting that barely coated rooftops. But by 6:30, the roads were already glazed with a thin layer of ice hidden beneath the fresh powder. Drivers didn't realize what they were driving on until tires started slipping, brakes locked up, and cars began drifting sideways. Interstate 35 was the first warning sign. Several vehicles spun out near the downtown exits, triggering a chain of slowdowns that quickly grew into a miles-long bottleneck. On I-435, merge lanes turned into traps as cars slid across ramp entries and stalled at the top of icy overpasses. Even Highway 71, normally a high-speed corridor in the morning, saw cars losing control as visibility dropped and traction vanished. Drivers described the same nightmare scenario again and again. One second we were driving normally. The next, the whole road froze. Throughout the metro traffic maps lit up bright red. By 7:00 a.m., the National Weather Service updated its snowfall projections, raising expected totals to 3.4 inches, with chances of heavier bursts north of the Missouri River. Snowfall wasn't the biggest issue, the speed of the freeze was. Kansas City police, overwhelmed with calls, issued immediate warnings, urging residents to stay home if possible. Officers responded to slide-offs on nearly every major artery, cars lodged in ditches, trucks stuck on inclines, and vehicles crumpled in intersections as braking distances doubled or tripled on the icy pavement. Emergency services were stretched thin. Crews were forced to triage accident scenes, checking quickly for injuries before rushing to the next crash. Meanwhile, plow operators fought an uphill battle as snow continued to fall faster than they could clear it. What made the situation even worse was timing. This wasn't happening at midnight or late evening. It was happening during the busiest hour of the day. Families trying to get kids to school, workers heading downtown, delivery drivers starting their routes, all found themselves caught in the storm's ambush. By mid-morning, Kansas City had become a sprawling network of slow-moving traffic, stalled vehicles, and flashing hazard lights. It was clear that the storm had blindsided Missouri's western half just as severely, if not more so, than the chaos unfolding in St. Louis. As crashes multiplied across both St. Louis and Kansas City, Missouri's transportation crews found themselves in a desperate race to regain control of the roads. The biggest challenge wasn't the amount of snow, it was the timing. The storm arrived hours ahead of schedule, leaving plow teams and salt trucks scrambling to catch up while the roads froze beneath thousands of cars. MoDOT officials acknowledged the truth quickly. They were caught off guard. Expecting the snow to arrive closer to late afternoon, they hadn't pre-treated the interstates early enough. And once the first flakes hit the pavement, temperatures were already cold enough for the snow to bond instantly, creating a slick, icy layer that salt struggled to break through. By the time plows were deployed, St. Louis and Kansas City highways were already jammed with stalled traffic, making it nearly impossible for heavy equipment to move efficiently. Snowplow operators found themselves weaving through narrow gaps between stranded vehicles inches at a time just to reach the worst sections of roadway. In St. Louis, the city activated a full fleet of 50 snowplow operators focusing first on major arteries: Interstate 70, Interstate 64, Interstate 44, and key connectors leading into downtown. Only after those were partially cleared could they shift attention to school zones, hospital routes, and residential streets. But even with the city's full response, the snow kept coming faster than crews could push it away. Visibility dropped plows, kicked up clouds of powder that settled right back onto fresh ice, and salt struggled to keep up with the rapid cooling. In Kansas City, the situation was equally urgent. Crews reported that salt spreaders were having trouble gaining enough traction to operate safely, especially on steep ramps and overpasses. Some plows even had to be rerouted because traffic congestion made the main highways inaccessible. Throughout the day, police issued repeated alerts. Stay off the roads unless absolutely necessary. Give plows room to work. expect major delays on all interstates. Emergency dispatchers were overwhelmed receiving call after call for slide-offs, jackknifed vehicles, and multi-car pileups. The faster the snow fell, the more impossible it became to maintain proper coverage across a state as large as Missouri. By mid-afternoon, both cities were essentially operating under winter emergency conditions, with plow crews working non-stop in an attempt to reopen vital transportation routes. But every new snow band meant more ice, more slowdowns, and more risks for both drivers and road workers. This storm didn't just challenge Missouri's infrastructure, it exposed how vulnerable even well-prepared cities can be when a winter system arrives ahead of schedule and with explosive intensity.
They all oh my god, we're not going home this way.
What the
Someone
While St. Louis and Kansas City struggled under the weight of the sudden freeze, the rest of Missouri was far from spared. The winter storm stretched across nearly the entire state, bringing a dangerous combination of snow ice, reduced visibility, and plunging temperatures that intensified throughout the day. Most regions reported 2 to 4 inches of accumulation, with isolated pockets north of the Missouri River, reaching 5 or even 6 inches. But once again, it wasn't the total amount, it was the speed and freezing nature of the snowfall. Snow adhered to every surface, almost instantly forming slick layers on roads, bridges, curves, and overpasses. Even experienced winter drivers found themselves losing control on turns that normally feel routine. All across Missouri's highway network, traffic deteriorated rapidly. I-70 saw waves of accidents from Columbia to Wentzville, creating long backups. I-64 and I-44 experienced scattered crash clusters, some involving semis unable to brake on icy patches. Rural roads in northern counties became nearly impassable as blowing snow covered tire tracks within minutes. Visibility was another major threat. Heavy snow bands and ground-level drifting created whiteout pockets, where drivers could barely see more than a few car lengths ahead. Winds funneled snow into swirling curtains along open fields and hilltops, turning simple commutes into high-risk journeys. Emergency dispatch centers across the state were pushed to their limits. In counties surrounding Jefferson City, responders reported multiple simultaneous crashes from minor slide-offs to multi-vehicle collisions. Smaller communities with limited resources struggled to keep up, as calls came in faster than crews could respond. State officials repeatedly warned the public, if you don't need to travel, don't. As temperatures dropped into the upper teens and low 20s, DJEF untreated surfaces began to refreeze. Side streets became as slick as glass. Parking lots turned into skating rinks. Sidewalks froze over, sending pedestrians slipping and stumbling. Even major intersections in city centers became hazardous, forcing police to manually direct traffic in some areas. And Missouri knew the situation could worsen as the day continued. Cold air behind the storm was expected to push in overnight, creating a serious risk of black ice forming across already strained road systems. Meteorologists warned that even areas that seemed cleared could glaze over again by morning. From suburban neighborhoods to interstate corridors, Missouri found itself facing the full intensity of an early winter system, one that arrived too soon too fast, and with far more force than anyone expected.
And this is just the start of it. This is actually North Dakota mellow right here. Yeah, we finally...
By early evening, as the heaviest snow began to taper off, Missouri finally had a chance to assess the damage, and the picture across the state revealed just how disruptive this early season storm had been. Highways were partially cleared, but shoulders remained buried. City streets were passable but slick. and countless drivers were still trying to make their way home, hours after their commute should have ended. In St. Louis, road crews worked well into the night, pushing through packed layers of snow that had been compressed by hours of slow-moving traffic. Salt trucks made repeated passes along major corridors, fighting back against rapidly dropping temperatures. Neighborhood roads and residential blocks, however, remained lightly treated, forcing many residents to rely on four-wheel drive or stay home altogether. Kansas City faced a similar challenge. Icy patches lingered on ramps and overpasses long after plows passed through, and emergency crews reported dozens of disabled vehicles abandoned on the sides of highways. Reminders of how quickly the storm overwhelmed the city earlier in the day. Towing companies prepared for a long night ahead, anticipating calls stretching well past midnight. Schools across central and eastern Missouri began issuing updates, with many switching to delayed starts or remote learning options to keep buses off icy roads. Businesses encouraged employees to work from home until conditions improved. Grocery stores saw a surge in last-minute shoppers stocking up on essentials, aware that temperatures were expected to drop again soon. Meteorologists confirmed that the storm itself would move east overnight, leaving behind a brief window of quiet weather. But that calm would be short-lived. Another surge of Arctic air was forecasted to sweep into Missouri by Thursday, pushing temperatures into the teens, and in some northern regions potentially into the single digits. This meant one thing: refreezing. Even roads that appeared clear Tuesday morning could become dangerously slick again. Snowmelt left on sidewalks, residential driveways, and untreated surfaces would harden into ice. Residents were urged to shovel early salt heavily and avoid unnecessary travel during overnight freeze cycles. Despite the challenges, Missouri demonstrated resilience. Snowplow operators worked marathon shifts. Emergency responders navigated treacherous conditions to reach stranded motorists. Neighbors helped dig out stuck cars. Drivers who experienced the chaos firsthand had a renewed respect for winter's power. Missouri had weathered the first true winter storm of the season, but winter itself was just getting started. Missouri's first major winter storm of the season delivered a powerful wake-up call. From frozen highways in St. Louis to rush-hour gridlock in Kansas City, this fast-moving system proved just how quickly conditions can spiral out of control when snow arrives ahead of schedule and temperatures crash. And with another blast of Arctic air on the way, the state isn't done with winter just yet. If you live anywhere across the Midwest, make sure your car is winter ready. Keep extra supplies on hand and check weather alerts frequently. These storms move fast, and staying informed can make all the difference. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If you want more real-time storm updates, breakdowns of extreme weather events, and on-the-ground coverage, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more people who care about safety and severe weather awareness. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What's the most dangerous winter storm you've personally experienced, and how did it affect your area? Drop your story in the comments. I read every one of them. Stay warm, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.